everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Rob and I really appreciated your comments and questions during our Facebook Live session a few weeks ago. We heard you and scheduled this follow-up session to address some of your requests. We've kind of put together some scenarios we're going to talk through, hopefully to give you some more specific ways that you can respond or talk with your tweens or teens around racial inequities and different conversations you may have over the holiday weekend. So we've kind of put all of that into this short time we have together. Before we start, I'm Dr. Jen. I'm a nurse practitioner, researcher, international speaker, and author of Teen Speak. I help parents decode their teens and become fluent in Teen Speak to create thriving relationships and strong, independent teens.
And I'm Chris Robinson. I'm a therapist by trade, from Therapy by Rob. Work with a lot of different clients for an array of issues, whether it's grief and loss, dealing with depression, anxiety, you name it, is something I'm sure that I've worked with as far as clients is concerned. So we're going to focus primarily on teens. That's primarily my background. I've worked a lot with adjudicated young men, as well as I have my own teenagers now. So fun stuff.
Oh, absolutely. So we're going to jump right in. During our last Facebook Live session, Rob shared some information about creating those natural pathways to communicate with your kids about race and social justice, and really to kind of think about what that means to you. So finding books, movies, TV shows that provide those opportunities to have an open dialogue or an open conversation can be really helpful. This can get the conversation started without that awkwardness of like, I need to talk to you, or having the talk. It really is about taking that time to, all right, we're gonna have to stop.
No
Dang
worries. I love to hear it. It's like a real kid. That's what my kids would do if I was in here trying to. The more we get into it, the louder they get, the more they.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Rob and I really appreciated your comments and all the questions that you had during our Facebook Live session a few weeks ago, and then some of the comments that we have both gotten since then. We heard you and scheduled this follow-up session to address some of your requests and have really incorporated some more scenarios, some conversations that you may be struggling with your teen or potentially family members, especially as we go into the holiday weekend. So that's what we're going to spend this time together kind of talking through. And before we start, I'm Dr. Jen. I'm a nurse practitioner, researcher, international speaker, and author of Teen Speak. I help parents decode their teens and become fluent in Teen Speak to create those thriving relationships and strong, independent teens that we all want as parents.
And I'm Chris Robinson from Therapy by Rob. I got about 10 years of experience working with parents and primarily teenagers, as well as I have my own teenagers now. So I use a lot of these techniques and strategies we're going to talk about at home.
Great. Thanks, Rob. We're going to jump right in. So during our last session, Rob shared some information about creating natural pathways to communicate with our teens and our tweens about race, social justice, and really thinking about what that means to you and what you want to share with your teens. And depending on their age, how much you share with them. So you can find books, movies, TV shows that provide those opportunities to have that conversation versus really sit your teen down for the talk. That never feels comfortable and can be awkward for both you and your teen. So finding those natural ways to have a conversation can feel a lot smoother. And then it's really just part of what you do on a daily basis instead of sitting down for that talk. What we're going to do is post some links in the comments that give you some ideas for those different resources that you may want to look into. The first we'll post is around different books by age. actually. So there's some links with some book award winners in 2019 that will include. Rob shared a few books as well, and we'll include those links. And then Rob also shared an anti-racism link that has some really great resources. I'm looking at it right now. And just to kind of share a few things that are in there: resources for white parents to raise anti-racist children, articles to read, videos to watch, podcasts to subscribe to if you're a podcast listener, books to read, films and TV series, organizations to follow on social media, and some more anti-racism resources to check out. So that's going to be a really great link and resource for you as you're looking for those opportunities to kind of read or watch or share with your teen and then have some conversations around.
All right. So when we did our last live session, we received several comments and they were coming in kind of fast. And there was a lot of questions about what do you do if this happens, or how do you respond in this type of scenario? So we're going to take the 4 top scenarios that we heard a lot of comments about and try to provide some concrete strategies on how you can facilitate these conversations with your teens and your tweens. So the first the first scenario was one that we talked a little bit about the last time, but it was, what if your child comes home and says something that you disagree with, especially around social injustice, or they say a term that you disagree with, especially something that can get you emotionally charged. So I spoke about that a little bit, Jen. Do you have other strategies that you think we can add to that situation occurring with a parent and their teen?
Sure. I think, that situation is what causes us a lot of anxiety, like what you said or shared, and can cause us just to react immediately and try to shut down the conversation or force what we think over top of what our teens are trying to tell us, which can cause them to shut down. And I know you shared some of that last time. So I thought I would bring it back to talk through specific strategies that you might be able to use, and feel free to jump in. Rob and I kind of jump in on each other all the time when we're doing workshops and things like that. So the first thing to do would be to kind of acknowledge, know that ahead of time, kind of plan for those situations, although you'll never know when they're going to come up, but have an idea in your head. Okay, if my teen says something that's shocking to me, what do I want to do? I want to take a deep breath and try not to shut the conversation down. So shutting down the conversation will just cause them to not come to you next time when they hear something. And you definitely want to know what they're hearing, because as we're sharing our own values and kind of raising our children to be good people, they are also getting information from social media, from their friends, from books and movies and TV shows, just like some of the resources I was talking about earlier that we could share. So it's not all about like we didn't do a good job. It's about, they're hearing things from all different places, and part of development is that they're taking all that in and then kind of creating their own value systems and things like that. So we want to know what they heard. So you might start by listening to what they are sharing with you or what they think, and then make a statement back to them like, I hear what you're saying, or that's an interesting thought, and really keeping that sarcasm out, because we know that can be hard to do sometimes. And following that up with like, tell me more about that. What have you heard about that situation? Or what have you heard about the protests? What have you heard about George Floyd? They could have gotten their information from a lot of different sources. As we've seen on social media, there's quite a blast of people and their comments, and really no filter on what it is that they're sharing. Tell me more about, you can say for anything, but asking permission is another strategy that I don't know if we shared last time, in feeling like your teen has control or has some respect over the conversation versus us just blurting out everything that we know to them or want them to share or want to share with them or want them to feel. So can I share some of my feelings or thoughts with you? can be a really important piece before you start sharing them. And I know some people worry that their teen is going to say no to that. So depending on the level of the conversation, you may or may not want to use that. Or if they do say no, you could always go back to that tell me about again. Well, tell me what you think about that. What are the things that are really making you upset? And then share with them. Share with them your thoughts, your feelings about it, what you've heard, and ask them a follow-up question. What do you think about that? What do you think about what I shared with you? Or, what will you do next time if it was a situation? So really planting the seed is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to change their mind right in that conversation, although that would be amazing, right? But our teens are never going to say, wow, such great information you gave me, mom or dad. But they will think about it and come back later to kind of ask again. Or if you're putting those things into place, like conversations happening organically over time, you can come back to it at another time as well. So I don't know, Chris, if you have other thoughts around that. I know you shared last time as well. So
I think the ask permission is usually like a big put off to a lot of parents. It's like, you live in my house, you're going to talk to me when I want to talk to you. I think that is something that can still be useful if you don't want to give them the option about talking about the actual topic. If they say something that you really need to address or you want to address, you can give them some choice in when, and say, that's real interesting what I heard you say right before dinner. Can we spend some time talking about that now, or do you want to talk about it when it's just you and I?
mm-hmm.
And that gives them an option versus they can say no. I know a lot of parents ain't going, well, you know what? I tried to give you an option. You took the wrong one. You're going to talk about it anyway. So you can give them that autonomy. And usually when they have some say in that control, they're more apt to listen to what you're trying to, share with them. And I think that's the important thing as parents. We want what we're saying to get in. So that's another way to do it.
Yep. So it kind of leads into our next scenario that came up, is really in preparing our tweens and teens for experiencing or witnessing bullying or racially charged comments. How do we kind of prepare them for that? Because we know teens, when they're not prepared, they kind of just go off in any type of direction or just go along with what their friends are doing.
Absolutely. So I think the important thing is just that when you're not prepared for something, and our teens they have a lot of obstacles that they're crossing. They're learning how to deal with driving, they're learning how to deal with peer pressure, all types of stuff. They're figuring this stuff out. And you can prepare them for those scenarios by having some dialogue beforehand. The most important thing that I think parents lose sight of is that you still have quite a bit of influence on your teens when they start to think their friends are more important. So the first thing that I would suggest is to lay out your expectations in a situation like that. I would hope that you do A, B, and C. And me and Jen are not here to tell you what your moral compass is or what your expectations to be, but that's the opportunity to kind of lay out, like, if you heard a friend say this, my hope would be that you would let them know that you disagree with that. Provide some thought on why that could be disrespectful to a whole group of people. If that's something that you wanted to kind of give them. You're not telling them that they have to do it, because we know when you do that with teens, they just become more rebellious, whether they do it in your face or when you're not looking. But stating your expectations and what you would hope would come of that situation, I think would be the first thing that I would do. Next, which is sometimes complicated because we usually have the answer on what they should do. As parents, we've been through it. We know the right answer. We know what they should do. And we just want to tell them that. We just want to say, when this happens, do this. If you do that, you'll be successful. And you're probably right. But because teens are so set on trying to have their own autonomy, you need to really go through the process of brainstorming options. That means ask them, what would you do in this situation? Or what do you think you would do? What would you want to do? And let them list some things. And then that's a perfect situation where you can say, you know what, I have some thoughts of other things you might want to consider. Can I give those to you? Or just add the things that you think they should consider. So you provide a list of things that they've come up with and you come up with. This is also teaching your child how to brainstorm and problem solve. You don't want to take that away from them and they be just too dependent on you. You're exercising that skill set. So going through this process is really important. Once that's done, this is another very difficult part for parents. we see the best option. All right, we brainstorm together. Now I need you to make sure you do B. Where in reality, if they're going to be motivated to actually follow through with the steps, it has to be something they're vested in. They have to pick the option. And even if it's not the best option, it's more important that they are committed to trying to do what's right than to say, I didn't pick the best option and my mom berated me or my dad berated me, so I don't even want to try any of it. It's very important for you to let them select what they think is going to be best. You can provide some possible outcomes to that choice, even to try to help them to reconsider, but not just telling them it's a bad choice and mine is better. So you really want them to select their choice. And then the fun part is role play. Walk through the process. If I'm your friend and I say this, how would you respond? And that's where you can start to put in, is this the best option? Because you can get some possible outcomes on this might be the way that it goes. Parents like to say, just go tell somebody. Sometimes that's probably not the best option. Sometimes it's not realistic for me to, be outcasted by all my groups of friends by going and tell the principal that I heard this kid say something that I'm close with in front of everyone. That might not be the best option because the outcome is not going to be great when I become outcasted. And you know how important it is for peers to fit in with one another as teenagers. So really kind of walk through that process, role play. Usually can be very helpful when planning for very difficult situations that might come up, such as hearing a friend or just a peer saying something or showing some type of bullying behavior.
So important that just say no doesn't necessarily work, even though that would be a great thing, right? Just
so
like
nice.
Go tell an adult isn't necessarily the option that teens feel the most comfortable with. And maybe they would get to that place, but this might not be where they start.
Right. That would be, it would be great to be in that position. And sometimes that is the option and you're okay with that. You feel empowered to do that. That's why it's important to assess what is most comfortable to them. That's why you're asking them that. And, kind of support your teens as they try to go off into the world and make those decisions when they're confronted by those difficult behaviors. So yes, it can be difficult, but nonetheless, planning is the most important thing. If they're prepared, they're more likely to take some steps to be safer or address things that you want them to address or that they feel that they need to address.
And like you said, what a great learning for them to plan for situations, because then they'll continue to do that, plan for other situations that they might be in as they get older. They're going to have other things come up.
Absolutely. And that skill is more important than just having the answer in that particular situation.
Yep.
So another thing that came up that I think that we've all been thinking about, especially as we get ready for the holiday weekend, everybody is barbecuing and getting together, whether you're celebrating the 4th of July or you're just celebrating being with family. It can be a very difficult time to start to have these very charged conversations in these social gatherings, because usually families are all over the map. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody loves each other, which means everybody can go crazy with what they say to one another. So one of the things that we were asked was, how do you manage those conversations at these social gatherings with family, people that you love, which is a lot different than just back and forth with someone on social media. So what things you think that people can use, what skills or strategies, Jen, to manage those type of conversations?
Yeah, I'm interested in having this conversation between the two of us, because there's so many different things that you can do depending on your comfort level, who it is you're talking with. Is it your 90-year-old grandpa, or is it your sister or brother-in-law that's pretty aggressive in passionate about their feelings on the topic? So coming up with a few strategies that might work for kind of a variety of situations and people and comfort levels. I think to start out with is something that we do a lot in my family. I have 2 young adults now, but we have always talked with them before we went somewhere, that we thought, okay, there might be some conversation here that is going to be different than what we've talked about at home, what our family values are. And really letting them know that if they overhear something, a conversation that you feel like might not be appropriate, try and spell that out. Like, what do you think that's going to be? It really is another opportunity to talk about family values and what you hope you're instilling in your own kids.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily saying that that family member is a bad person, because they're not a bad person. We love them, or a family member or a friend. We just want to make sure that our teens and tweens are feeling comfortable in those situations and can kind of help plan again
Mm-hmm.
for what they might do if they find themselves in a situation. So thinking about for yourself, what is it that's important to you? Kind of where are the lines going to be drawn? Because for some of your family member or friends, you might feel like you could walk away from any conversation that they might be having. So where's the line going to be drawn in that time that you do want to respond, walk away, however it is that you feel comfortable? So kind of reflecting for yourself what that might be too would be important. And then there's different levels, as you know, of confronting someone. And if you're just silent, a lot of times people take that as agreeing with what they have to say, or participating in a conversation, even though you didn't say anything. You were standing there and kind of didn't say anything to the opposite. So you want to make sure that you have at least one level of being comfortable saying, I don't agree with that. And if it's not something that you feel comfortable having a conversation about, especially in a large group, because there might be multiple people, you might follow it up with something like, I don't think this is the best time or the right time to discuss this. And, just leave it at that. And then you could leave the situation, or maybe that person would be willing to move on at that point. But then at least you've said something. And if your kids are around, they can see that kind of role modeling of, I'm not 100% comfortable confronting my, father-in-law, say, but here's what I can say so that he knows that I don't feel the same way that he does. So there might be different ways you would respond to different people, and really kind of thinking about that ahead of time. That's why it's important to kind of really reflect on what is it that you believe, what's happening in society now. Educate yourself. Like, those resources would be super helpful. Look into whatever it is that you feel like you need more information on that would help you feel more comfortable, because the more equipped you feel to have a conversation, the more comfortable you'll be and the more likely you'll be to do it and have it in a way that isn't going to cause a lot more aggression, or your family member being like, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, actually I do, because I've been following so-and-so on social media, or I've been listening to this podcast, or just helps you feel a little more confident in some of the things that you're saying.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that usually gets families charged is it becomes personal. If you can refrain from attacking the person or accepting a different perspective as an attack on you, you can usually keep the tensions at a decent level. If you decide that you want a dialogue, it's very important not to say somebody's position is stupid. It's very important not to tell somebody that they don't know what they're talking about. Things of that nature usually stops the conversation from being productive before it gets started. There's so many different perspectives, and I disagree with a lot of them, but that's what they are. Their vantage points, their viewpoints. If I can step sideways and say, I can see how you see things that way. I don't agree. I can see how you see things that way. People are usually a little more open to hearing what you have to say now, which that's usually our goal. I want you to see my perspective and view my, what I think is important, and maybe change a little bit of the way that you see things. That is usually the goal, especially with family members. The goal is not to go in there and say that I want to hurt Uncle Frank's feelings because I think that he doesn't know what he's talking about. That becomes the goal once we take something personal. We feel like you violated us or disrespected us, and now my goal is to just make you upset. And that doesn't achieve anything, especially at social gatherings where you're usually there to enjoy your loved ones. So if you can refrain from taking things as a personal attack and then giving them back as a personal attack, that can be very helpful. If you feel yourself getting into that situation, it's very important to sidestep it and just say, you know what, this conversation has gotten a little too tense, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull myself out. And that's okay.
For sure. kind of along those lines of listening, voicing that out there, like, hey, I've just given you the respect to kind of listen to your perspective on this. Can I have the same respect just to share a few things with you? And it can kind of
Absolutely.
help to diffuse potentially that conversation. Yep, for sure. I think that's probably the biggest keys to talking with family members or feeling comfortable in what you're going to say before you go. Kind of that planning piece again. What is
Yep.
it that I feel comfortable sharing? What do I know? What can I bring in? And who could I talk with? Maybe there's someone that's a little less intense in their feelings about something that you could practice on first. See
Right.
how that goes, see how they respond. Mhm. So I think the last piece is really about supporting family members. So we've talked about those family members that, may have differing opinions than we do and how to work through a conversation like that. But what about supporting family members that might be just really angry or hurt with our current racial climate? And, what can we do to kind of come alongside them?
Well, I think this is something that I've been getting a lot from just family, friends. They don't necessarily identify with that same level of anger, or it doesn't impact them the same way, but they want to be empathetic. I think the important thing, one, is don't come in with advice first. Don't come in and say you should do this, or you should talk to someone, or you shouldn't take it so serious, or you shouldn't think about it. When you do that, it comes across as dismissive of what that person is going through, and that usually causes more of a rift if you're trying to be supportive. So I would stand clear of that, of trying to fix the problem. In motivational interviewing, we call that resisting the righting reflex, which usually pushes people away. The second thing that I would do is empathize. It is okay to not have the answer and just say, I can see this is extremely difficult for you. I can see how painful this is. I can see how frustrating this is. Being that person, that sounding board where you can identify someone else's emotions as they're trying to express it to you, whether it be verbal, nonverbal, through action, whatever, is very supportive in nature, that you start to feel like you're not by yourself. And you won't always get an immediate response like, yeah, I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Someone that's experiencing anger may not give you any sign that they want that or that they appreciate that, but that's more part of the process. If you want to be supportive, sometimes just empathizing with someone's position or how they feel can be one way that they feel a little more supported and not alone. Once you get them to a point of maybe they're dialoguing and they feel like they want to address this issue and you don't know how to address it, there's certain questions you can use that can help them to explore what they should do next. What have you tried to deal with this anger? What's the result of that? Did you ever feel any better? Did it get any worse? Was there no impact? What other things have you considered? Those things. And now they're starting to think past that moment. Once they get to that stage where they like, I want to not feel this way, I need to do something, is where those questions can come into play. And you can ask them questions that makes them think, if they were feeling better or the last time they felt great and they weren't this angry, what was going on in your life? What did the resources look like? Who was around you? What things were you doing for fun? COVID-19 complicates all these things. As you are sitting put, you can't do a lot of the normal stuff that you've done, whether you go to the gym or you go out with friends for a drink, and that can also complicate things. So understanding that they may have to get creative, that's where you can start to develop some suggestions when they get to a point like, I don't know what to do. If I knew what to do, I'd do it. If somebody gave me a suggestion, I'd try anything. That's usually when they're ready for suggestions if you have thoughts. But I'll be very, very careful in just telling them to do something. I would always ask, what have you tried? What have you thought of? What has worked? What hasn't worked? And then are you open to some things that I think may benefit or may help you to feel a little better? And that's where you can start to give different things that you might consider to be helpful to that person, whether it's counseling, whether it's a different coping mechanism, whatever it might be.
Sure. When would people kind of know when counseling may be an appropriate time to suggest to their either teen, young adults, because we're seeing this kind of in all ages.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think that is a big taboo, especially for men of color and teenagers. They are not big at like saying like, I want to go to therapy. I think there's a misconception of what therapy or counseling is. I think having the conversation of when you do talk to someone that you think gets what you're going through, what does that feel like? Mm-hmm. And then tying that into having somebody that's 100% on your side, going to not judge you. You can be without a filter and try to go through these thoughts and feelings and figure out what you want to do next. If you had a process like that, would you be willing to do that? And everybody has somebody that they've had at some point where they're talking to them and they just feel like that's my person. That's what they call it. That's my person. If you find the right counselor or therapist or life coach or whoever that you can talk to, that's what we call your person. And that person is there in your corner and they're not there to judge you or give you any kind of weight of you should think this way or you should absolutely do this. That's not what counseling and therapy is for. So I think that when people are saying like, I don't know what else to do, people just don't understand. I've tried talking to people. That's usually a time where I think that they'll probably be more primed for counseling. And usually, if you want to suggest it, it's all about just try it. Mm-hmm. There's no obligation for any therapist or counselor or life coach that I know. If you went to a session, a lot of times there's free sessions where you can do, and a lot of therapists, as well as myself, accept insurance. So a lot of this is covered. It's not no risk. Try it. If it doesn't feel good, just like a date, don't go back to it. And you can try another counselor. Not every therapist is for every person. You'd be surprised that I've seen a lot of clients where I'm not the person for them and they find a person for them and they do great. And I've been with people where they've been to other therapists and like therapy doesn't work for me and they've done great with me. Mm-hmm. It's, relationships and finding that match is very, very important in counseling therapy, but it would just be more try it. I'm not saying sign up for a month. I'm not saying come up with a couple $100s to pay for it. Try the free session, see if it's something that you enjoy, something that you could benefit from, and go from there. Usually when there's low risk involved, low cost, you can get people that will be open to at least trying to see if there's a benefit for them.
Sure. And the trying is the key, I think, with teens especially. Like, oh, you're not committing to it. See what you think.
Right.
And your point of if you've been in therapy in the past and it hasn't worked out for you, doesn't mean that it's never going to. It might not have been the right fit.
Yep.
Super important. So we've created a tip sheet that will help you remember some of the different strategies that Rob and I went through during our time today. And that will also be a link in the comments. So feel free to kind of click on that, open that up. Hopefully that helps with some of the different strategies in particular that we used today when we were sharing through scenarios. We're going to be open to other conversations. We'll probably plan conversations about once a month or so. So definitely hit us up on our Instagram, on our Facebook, comments either on this post itself or just sending us direct messages for conversations that you're interested in kind of talking through. We'll be doing live so that you can add in your comments and questions during that time. And if you're not already, follow us both on our social media, the Teen Speak for Parents and Therapy by Rob. And we really thank you for being a part of our time together today and for even considering trying some different strategies to really open up conversations with our teens and tweens and really helping them plan for the future and conversations and situations they might be in. So great.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.